Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's TechCast webinar, Set Up Affordable Care Act in Sage 100, presented by Ann Parsons, our Sage Consulting Manager here with Eide Bailly Technology Consulting. I'm your organizer, Kelsey Urbis, and today's webinar will be recorded, and we will try our best to keep within the 30 minutes that we have allocated for today. We will have all of our attendees muted, but if you have any questions, please feel free to email myself at kurbis@eidebailly.com or Ann Parsons during or following this webcast, and we will be happy to assist you and answer those as soon as possible. With that, I am going to go ahead and hand it over to Ann Parsons.
Thank you, Kelsey. Can you all hear me?
We can. Thank you, Ann.
Okay, good. So welcome, everybody. Good morning and welcome, and thank you for attending today for this webinar. Some of you already know me online or we've met personally. My name is Ann Parsons. And today, the purpose of today's webinar is really briefly to just give you an overview of the ACA, and these are some slides that I'm going to show you. It's really a video presentation, but we didn't have a good sound result trying to show that to you through the webinar, so I'm going to go through it and just put the wording in for you there as we go along. But the purpose of the webinar really, or the goal, is to share with you a little bit about the ACA, and then in specifically really is how it affects the Sage 100, and how Sage 100 handles it, the employer and employee setup, and generating forms and that type of thing. And as Kelsey said, if there are questions at the end, this is really a really brief webinar that we're doing. You can by all means email Kelsey herself or myself. We will give you that contact information at the end. So just then to go ahead here, I just want to go and show you what our agenda is. We've got a little overview, and then setting up of ACA in Sage 100, how to install it, how to determine if you're an ALE applicable large employer, how to set up the employees, and how to generate the ACA forms. So with that, I'm just going to launch that first little video that we have from Sage. Just be a second here. I'm going to mute the sound because I don't believe you are hearing that very well. So as you can see there, this is just a little overview of that. Beginning 2016, ALEs have to begin filing annual information reports, 1094C and 1095C with the IRS, documenting that they have complied with Section 4980H of the Internal Revenue Code. So it'll just going to go forward now with the slide. New reporting requirements. If you have more than 50 full-time or full-time equivalent employees, your company will likely need to file 2 or more tax forms in 2016, reporting information from the 2015 calendar year. So that's historically from the 2015 calendar year. This is what the form looks like. I have another slide at the end that I'll show you a little more detail on it. So this is the 1094 and 1095C forms. And this is the 1095C. So this is for the employer-provided health insurance offerage coverage. 1094 reporting requirements, 1094 and 1095B forms. You've probably seen some of these. And then the new reporting requirements for 1094 and 1095B forms. So this is for the health coverage. So this is a sort of a chart which I can let you have if you want some further detail on it. I'm sure that most of you have been reading up from the IRS, and this gives you a sort of a hierarchical view of which of the new IRS forms will you need to file. So, essentially you would say, do you offer health insurance to your employees? If yes, is your plan self-insured? Yes. Do you have 50 or more full-time employees, or are you a member of an applicable large employer? And then if yes, then these are the forms that you have to comply with. That's the 1094C, 1095C, including Part 3. And if no, then you will need to file, and on the bottom rung there, you will need to file 1094B and 1095B. This is all very confusing, but if you go through the chart like this, it actually starts to make a little more sense. And I'm sure that with most of you, you have already gone through, trying to figure out what forms you're going to need to submit to the IRS. So here again, from the top, if no, you do have 50 or more full-time employees, or you have a member of, or you're a member of an applicable large employer, then if the answer is yes to that, then these are the forms you file there. And here, if the answer is no, relax, you don't need to file any of the new forms. Again, from the top, if you do not offer health insurance to your employees, no, you do not have 50 or more full-time employees, or you are a member of an applicable large employer, then yes, you will have to file 1094C and 1095C. Okay, and so those you still have to, file certain. There'll still be certain requirements, even if you're not subject to the, the ALE ruling. So this is just the, as I said, a very brief breakdown of that. There is a lot more information on the IRS website on this subject, and I have some information for you. At the end of the session, I will also give you the names of 3 of our ACA experts at Eide Bailly if you need some additional information. So now we're just going to go into the second section of the agenda, and this is really more on the installation part of it, how to set it up for reporting. So you're going to download and install the appropriate product update for your version of Sage 100. You can get that from the knowledge base. You set up the appropriate security rights in the role maintenance, and then you set up the appropriate payroll option. This just takes a minute to refresh. Okay, so these are the installation requirements. This is where you can download it from. I'm sure you've been to that site before. 2016, that's already been scheduled for release, but it's out for the clients. It's really just very new. That one does not need any updates or anything. 2015, product update 2. 2014, product update 6. And 2013, product update 9. And then Sage 100 4.5, product update 8. So some of these, this video was done a little while ago, and I'm not sure if they're all out on the website already. But remember that 4.5 is not really going to be supported any longer from January, and IRD will not be available for that. So I highly recommend that everyone tries to upgrade to at least 2015 at this point. So setting up your security then, you're going to open the Library Master under Main and then Role Maintenance. On the Task tab, you expand the payroll and select the following checkboxes. Tasks there you'll see under Payroll. There'll be some additional fields there that you hadn't seen before. Make sure that those are all checked. Otherwise, you won't have access to it. Okay. Setting up payroll options. So you open Payroll Setup, Payroll Options. On the main tab, verify that Retain Perpetual Payroll History is selected. Now, hopefully that is always the case. I'm sure in most cases people will have that turned on, but that's really vital for this because that's where it's going to track the hours and the information for the reporting. If it wasn't selected, then you may have some issues with the integrity of your data and you might need to do some manual modifications there. But just make sure that that is selected. These are the sources that you can find more information on the IRS website. And we can put that in an email for you if that's going to be, something that you would wish to have. Now here I'm going to go into the next one. Determining whether you are a large employer. Just a brief overview of that as well. Trying to figure that out. Everybody's scrambling. Okay, so the ACA Applicable Large Employer ALE report is made available to you as a self-help for your independent use. SAGE cannot and does not guarantee the report's accuracy or applicability to your circumstances. Calculations are currently based on legislation effective January 1, 2015. Recalculation may be required if such legislation changes. In order to comply with the Affordable Care Act, hours of service must be reported by calendar month. Because hours worked are tracked by pay periods in SAGE 100, which it may span multiple months, a calculation is performed to arrive at an approximate monthly total. The total is an estimate and may not reflect the actual hours worked. So for specific tax or legal advice, see a professional or tax service provider or an attorney as appropriate. Okay? So that's just to note that basically we, in SAGE 100, that's how we track the hours, and the report itself is designed a certain way and reads the information a certain way. Okay, so now how to determine if you are an applicable large employer, an ALE. Goal to determine if you have an average of at least 50 or more full-time and or full-time equivalent, or the FTE employees. Based on hours, calculate the number of employees for each month. Add the number of employees you had each month and divide by 12 to calculate your yearly average. How hours are calculated on the ALE report. Data from the perpetual history files. Those are the PR_22 and PR_23, those two files. 130 or more hours per month equal a full-time employee. Less than 130 per month equals a part-time employee. Part-time employee hours are used to determine full-time equivalent FTE employee count. So no more than 120 hours per month can be counted for a part-time employee. For employees who accumulate more than 120 hours per month and fewer than 130 hours per month, only 120 hours are included in the calculation. Formulas used to determine monthly FTE count. Total hours of service accumulated by all part-time employees with a cap of 120 hours per employee divided by 120. So the result is calculated to a second decimal point. Okay, so here's an example there. You'll see John, hours of service was 85, Susan was 120, she actually worked 122, Mike was 70, so that's 275 hours in total. So the calculation there, Susan's only 120 hours of Susan's hours are calculated or included in the total. 275 divided by 120 equals 2.29. Rounded to the nearest whole number, your March count would be 2 for those part-time employees. Total employee counts. So your monthly full-time and full-time employee equivalents, the equivalents are added together to determine the monthly total. To get the average count for the year, monthly totals are added together and then divided by 12. And the result is rounded to the nearest whole number. Use the average count to help you determine. Pay periods that span multiple months. Now it's, you have that with Sage 100. For ACA reporting purposes, hours must be reported by calendar month. So Sage tracks hours by pay period. When a pay period spans more than 1 month, a calculation is performed to prorate the hours and determine how many hours are counted toward the total for each month. So bi-weekly is 1st through the 13th. Weekly is 1st through the 6th. Okay, and so that's how it determines that, because of course of the pay periods. The formula to determine the hours: the day of the pay period end date divided by the in the pay cycle times the hours worked. The remaining hours count towards the previous month's total. So, for example, if we're looking here, Jerry was paid 80 hours, okay, and the pay period was ending July 4th. So you'll see the calculation there. Only 23 hours were counted for July, okay, and then the following month, from June, then the hours deducted, the 23 hours deducted from the 80 hours gives us 57 hours. And so you'll see that on the report. And that is why when you run the report, it may not match your perpetual history. So it's not really intended to do that. It's not intended to exactly match the perpetual history report. And we could have some discrepancies there. Okay, so you'll see here, Alan is paid 40 hours and the pay period ending is July 3rd. So only 17 hours were counted for July, 23 hours for June. So there you'll see the applicable report, the ACA applicable large employer report. It can be different to your perpetual history. So just so you note that, we are going to obviously have a lot of people who are concerned about that, trying to compare the hours and making sure that they match. The best way, of course, is when you run this report is when you run it for a full calendar year. Then you're going to get the best result for that. So here we have where Sage is mentioning that. You'll see that if we're looking at that perpetual history, it's not going to show the right amount for the same pay period. The same pay period that we're looking at, or the same date range, should I say. Okay, so that's just to point that out, that when you run the report, you may, have some questions about that. Okay, same check date range you see there, and yet there's quite a big difference in the two. So when you run it for a 12-month period, you'll see the result is far more accurate. It's much better that way. It's really intended to be run for a 12-month period, I guess. Okay, so just how you can run that report. Open the Payroll, ACA Applicable Large Employer Report. You'll see you have some choices there. You can exclude certain earnings codes. Remember that the only the earnings codes with a method of standard and add to rate are included in the method of calculation. So, but you can exclude some of the earnings codes at the time when you run this report. if you have been setting them up as if they are tracking hours. In other words, you wouldn't want to include them. You put your date range in there, and that would be for the pay period end date, beginning and start date there. You see we're running it here for a full year. You can opt to include the seasonal employees on the report, and you can also decide if you want to run the report with totals only. Then you don't get the detail for the individuals. I'm sure some of you have tried this already. You can run it multiple times and doesn't hurt anything. When the report completes, you will get this message. Do you want to update the full-time and total employee counts to the ACA employer file? And once you say yes there, it will update that. Now you can run it more than one time. It's not going to double up on anything. If it's already updated, it'll just basically append to that if there were any changes made between the times that you ran it the first time. Okay. So now we're going to move on and go and look at the actual setup of it. This is going to be how to set up your employers. Okay, so you use Payroll ACA Employer Maintenance to enter the information that will appear on the 1094C. See the menu option for it there. You can just select it from the menu. Okay, so here you've got information that obviously will pull from your company maintenance setup. So it's pulling that in there. You select your year that you're going to be effective, and then information, contact name, just basic information there for reporting. Those where you see the little arrows there, those are going to be the 1094 Part 1. Okay. And then more information there. If you are a member of an ALE member, part of an aggregated group, if appropriate. And then other members, then you would add that, clicking on the Other Members button. That'll take you to that screen. And then right at the top where you'll see the arrow, that's the monthly detail. This is populated by that report that we ran earlier. Or you can do this manually, or you could be importing this information. Okay, so you can, once you've imported from that report, you could manually edit this as well if needs be. If your hours are the same there, you can click on that little wheel at the top there, that little cog, and that allows you to enter the first one, and then you can just prorate it to the rest of the months, and it'll just do that automatically for you. But typically, I would imagine you would have a different count for each month. Okay. That is there if you are offering the minimum essential coverage, so that needs to be checked or not. Again, that also pulls it from your information internally, which comes from the report. The full-time employee count there, 1094C, Part 3 will be populated with that. And there again, also part of 1094C, Part 3. And then there, if you're part of an aggregate group, that gets checked or not. And then, of course, there's your total indicator there. Okay, so as I said, the report will populate this for you. Once you run the report and update it, you have to click the update in order to populate this. And then changes can be made beyond that point manually if you need to do so. And that was the setup screen there. So remember, this information here is going to be only available where we have the highlighted there in 2016. So I don't think there'll be very many of you that will have 2016, but you know, basically it's going to be they're going to add a few extra fields to that entry screen there. Okay, so this just basically says that report is made available to you as a self-help tool for independent use, and SAGE cannot and does not guarantee the report's accuracy. Obviously, that depends on your information and what you've been putting in there, and you know, that there will be one good thing about the reporting for 20 is that the IRS has announced that there will be no penalties for incomplete or inaccurate returns. So at least you can take comfort in that. I guess you just have to submit your returns, but they are not going to be imposing any penalties for 2015. It'll be good practice for everybody, I guess. Okay, so now we're going to look at the employee side of it. And this is really where there's more work to be done on the employee, because you know, you are actually populating each individual. Information can be imported into here if you have this information in a spreadsheet or something like that. Using a Visual Integrator, we have some import jobs already set up for that. So setting up ACA for employees, you can access it from the employee maintenance screen. There's a little button there that's added, or you can also, there's also a menu option for that from the ACA main menu that's been set up. You'll notice there's a little ACA button there now under the direct deposit button. You can reach it there, or from, as I said, from the menu that they've added for ACA. So you'll notice when you access it, it will come up with this screen here, and this is the information that will appear on the 1095C. Here you would indicate if they have signed the consent form, and that is found under the tax status. So if you go to the employee maintenance under tax status, there's a little checkbox there. If you've checked it there, it will appear as checked here. And then also if you have provided employer self-insured coverage, this is selected if the employee was enrolled in an employer-sponsored self-insured health coverage offered by the company. In that case, the covered individuals button will light up, and then go in there and enter the information there. For spouse or family members and so on. Then we have the monthly detail for the individual, and this is where, as I was saying, this is where the bulk of the information really needs to be entered and can be quite time-consuming for those of you who have you know, a large number of employees. The offer of coverage. So if the information is the same for each month, then, and you're doing this manually, then you can just enter it on the first row, and then you can copy the remaining using that little wheel at the top there on the right-hand side. It can copy it down. If it isn't, then of course you would have to be entering this manually, or as I said, there are some import jobs available that could be done through Visual Integrator. So here you would be entering the employee share of the lowest cost, and then this is the applicable section 4980H safe harbor if it is applicable for the individual. Okay, you'll see there is your buttons there that you can, so same for each month, you can copy things down. So if an individual, on the covered individuals, spouses or whatever, if they do not, children, they do not have a social security number, then just enter the birth date in that field and the birth date field and leave the social security blank. So this is for the 1095C Part 3. So there you would also indicate the if it's the individual is covered all months or not. If they're not, then of course you could possibly, like in this situation here with a family, individual might have got married there in February, and then had a child in November. So November and December, the child was brought into, still doesn't have a social security number, so we just put the birth date in there and check November and December. Okay, seasonal employees. Open payroll, the main menu, employee maintenance. On the wages tab, you select seasonal employee. So you just check that little box there, and that will indicate that they are a seasonal employee. More information on all of that again, that same screen that we saw earlier. This is more information that you can get from Sage City, IRS website, and the knowledge base. And then there's also the year-end center in Sage City that has a lot of good information. These videos also will become available, and then you can probably listen to it with the full sound as well if you wish to, maybe share it with some other members of your staff or something like that, or just wish to revisit them as well. They will still be available for that. Now we're just going to look quickly at the forms and how to generate them. And as you know, most of the forms now, well, pretty much everything is run through the federal e-filing found under the period end through ATRIX. Forms are not quite available yet. They are still not sure, exactly if there are going to be any changes made yet. So I believe we are looking at about December 18th was the last we were told that the forms will be made available on the ATRIX website. Okay, so setting up employer contribution and generating ACA forms. You first got to create the employee contribution deduction. You assign the employer contribution to all employees, and then obviously it gets picked up from the system from there. So there it is. I'm just going to quickly go through setting up an employer contribution for W-2s. So you open the Payroll Setup and go to Deduction Code Maintenance. The deduction type is going to be an employer contribution. You create, give it a new code, and it'll be whatever fixed amount, the calculation method. Put DD in the W-2 box code. So that's the code that's used for W-2s. Assigning the employer contribution to employees. You open payroll, employee maintenance, go to the deductions, click on the deduction button, and then you select the new code that you've created. Then enter the per payroll contribution, and if it is going to be automatic or not, just like a normal deduction that you would set up. Of course, this is not going to deduct from the employee, it's just going to track it so that it will appear on the W-2s. Now, if you haven't done this during the year, you can just go in here and add a year-to-date amount in the deduction field right there, as you can see. Or we could import into that. If you have that information, we could import into that. So here you'll see on a W-2 form, it'll appear with a DD and then the amount that has been captured there. And a lot of employers already did this previous years. They've been tracking that information as it is. Now, remember that for the ACA, really, we're looking at the premium and not just the employer contribution. So if you set up two codes, and one is the employee portion and the other one is the employer portion, with the DD type on the W-2, those will be combined. And so then you'll have the premium, which is really what needs to show for ACA. Okay, so generating the ACA forms then. Again, there, as I was saying, ACA will release ACA forms, and as they said, they have said December 18th, so hopefully we will get them by then. And 1094 and 1095 forms will be available after installing the following appropriate Sage product update, your 2015 year-end IRD, which of course we don't have yet, and the Atrix 2015 year-end update. And this is where I was saying version 4.5, you cannot apply the 2015 year-end IRD, so you need to be at least on 2014 or 2015 preferably. Due dates for the forms, February 1st there, that went rather quickly. Again, I can get you some in that information in an email if you don't already have it. Typically, it's the same sort of schedule that we're looking at for W-2s. But the forms will all be printed through the Atrix, just like we do the W-2s. So you don't need to worry about purchasing forms or anything like that. That will all be made available through the Atrix. So that sort of covers briefly, you know, and sort of, as I said, it's just an overview really of the setup that, you know, Sage, where Sage is, stands with this and how they've adapted their software to work with it. This is the form 1094B there that we were looking at, a little bit of a clearer picture of that, just to see what it looks like. And I think I do believe you can get these from the IRS website, at least to be able to see it. 1094B, transmittal forms, and then the 1094C there, and 1095C, and then these are our health reform specialists. We have Andy Kaiser in Colorado. In Idaho, we have Julie Hawkins, and in Utah, we have Brett Dagley. And if you want to set up consultation with them, this would probably not be free consultation, I'll just mention, but these are real ACA experts, and they could really offer you some very good, sound advice. They are obviously staying in touch with any changes that are made, any change in the legislation or anything that we need to know as far as the reporting is concerned. But as I mentioned in the beginning, that the IRS is not going to impose any penalties for, as they worded it, incomplete or, you know, inaccurate returns. So I think we're safe for 2015, which is a good thing. But we do still need to report, and I suppose it'll be a good platform to get ready for the whole thing, where we start the ball rolling for 2016, where then obviously it's going to be mandatory. I will also mention here, thank you very much for attending today, and just mention that if any of you on the webinar are not Eide Bailly Tax and Audit clients, that Eide Bailly does offer a free evaluation of your financials and your tax returns if you ever wish to become an Eide Bailly client. And for that, you can contact myself or any of the 3 contacts that I gave you. I'll just put that back on the screen so you can see that again if you wanted to take those down, or you can certainly get those email addresses from Kelsey or myself at any time. And I just want to thank you all very much again for attending. And sorry it was a little bit scrambled at the last minute because I was going to do the sound through the Sage videos, but then the sound didn't come across very well, and so I had to quickly jump in and put the words in myself. So I hope I did a good enough job for everybody. Thanks again, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful day.